If you're new here, we're in a series called Beyond, and last week was pretty great. I've heard a lot of good feedback that people were challenged by testing and sacrifice and the life of Abraham. And Beyond is a series that we end each year with. And on December 8th, listen closely, on December 8th, we're going to give a one-time offering above our tithes and offerings, or above that, to go and reach people in 2020. That's what we're going to use it for, just to reach. Last year, we gave a little over $16,000 to Beyond, and we were able to see fruit of that. I mean, major fruit, life change, salvations. We were able to do that, and so I'm praying this year that we go above and beyond even what we can think or imagine. And so you begin praying and preparing for December 8th. If you want to give ahead of time, we actually had some people already give last week. And you can do that if you won't be here December 8th, but you can also give online or via the app. But don't do it hastily. Pray about it. Pray about it. And I'm just excited to see where God takes us in that. All right? I want to continue today in the life of Abraham. But I want to take you back to the beginning. Now, when most people talk about Abraham's beginning, they start in Genesis 12. I'm actually going to just give you a little recap of Genesis 11 because it's really important. There was this big tower constructed, the Tower of Babel. And it's a project that symbolized humanity's rejection of God. And they declared independence from God, and they actually declared that they were going to worship other idols. Okay? At this time, everybody on earth, everybody except for one family line, okay, everybody else was not with God. There was actually only one family line that belonged to God. It was the descendants of Shem. Okay, the final line in this guy's, in Shem's descendants was a guy named Terah, Terah. Terah's name in Hebrew means moon. Okay, just track with me. I'm giving you a little context. In Hebrew, that literally means the end. The end. Scholars even tell us that this family, although it was the line of God, this family began worshiping idols. They had fallen into it. Now, Terah has a son, and his name is Abram. Remember we talked about Abraham, same guy. Now, Abram means father. Abraham, father of many. But here's the issue. Abram's got no kids. He has no children. So as Genesis 11 ends, as it comes to an end, it's almost as if this is the end. That hope is flickering out. That, okay, Abraham, you can't have any more kids. You're the end. This is the last line of God. So this is it. There's no hope. Darkness is coming in. And Genesis 12 opens up like this. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Hear me. In the midst of this darkness, in the midst of this idolatry, in the midst of this sin, God calls a man who barely knows him, who has no son, there's no kids in his future from his vantage point, and God says to this guy, you are going to be the father of the nation. All people are going to come from you, and you're going to have so many offspring and descendants, and everyone's going to worship, and I'm going to bless everybody through you. His destiny written into him. But he's near the end. And he's got nothing to show for it. Nothing. He can't see what God promised. Some of you are in the same spot. You know that God has given you a word. That God has destined something for your life for eternal significance. But many of you, you look around and you don't see it happening. You don't see any evidence of the promise that God's maybe given you. And what we're going to see in the life of Abraham is going to take tremendous faith and trust. And so I just want to look at Abraham as an overview, and I want us to ask a couple of questions. Here's the first question. Number one, am I really following God? Am I really following God? This question is about who is in charge of your life. God says, go to the land that I will show you. Notice, there's no record of where the land is. It's like God said, go, and Abraham said, where? And God says, I'll show you later. Come on. How many of you have a hard time trusting? Trusting. Not just God, but just trusting in general. I like how John Calvin says this. He said, it was like God said, just close your eyes and take my hand. Okay, God, I know what you said, but what about, or how will you do, or wait a minute, I don't think I can do that yet. I'm not ready. We do this all the time, don't we? When we even think about obeying God, we want to know all the answers before we even do it. It's like saying, you trust God with your life as long as you're in the driver's seat. As long as you can make the decisions. As long as you have control. Speaking of driving, I can't go anywhere without pulling up maps on my phone. Like I use maps, some of you use Waze, some of you have an old school GPS. I am not one of these good old boys who can go anywhere and know where everything is. I mean, we got a lot of those in this church. I am not. I'm awful with directions, okay? And I have to pull up maps. And so I'm listening and I'm doing well, I'm driving. All of a sudden, I may miss my turn, which happens pretty regularly. And I miss my turn, and guess what? The British lady tells me. I got her on British mode. I like it. She says, recalculating, right? I can't do British. I have to think about like spot of tea, and then I do, But she says recalculating. And what's awesome is, even though I missed my turn, even though I didn't go the right way, this lady's going to recalculate me. And it's okay. And I have a choice. I have a choice to listen to her and make a U-turn, or I can be stubborn in myself and say, I'm going to keep driving because I know I can find a road that will take me back. Listen to me. God is not your GPS. God doesn't come as your navigation device. He doesn't come as your GPS whose suggestions you can take or leave whatever you choose. He doesn't give you suggestions and then recalculate based on your response. He comes for total surrender. He comes as the car owner, not just the driver, but he owns the car. And what he says to Abram is just close your eyes, Abram, take my hand, and trust me, go. And notice, this is a personal call to Abraham, to Abram. Remember Terah, his dad, they're still alive, and they are trekking, and they're following God, but then they stop halfway. They stop halfway. You can go back and you can read it in chapter 11, but they stop halfway in Haran. And so now God says, hey, Abraham, it's your time. It's your turn. There's no record of Abraham saying, wait a minute, God, we're all good here. We can serve you here. This land is nice. I've got great stuff here. We're settled. Dad led us here. And what God says is literally, hey, it's time for you, Abram, to trust me. Don't miss this point. At some point, you and you and you and all of us, we have to make our own decision to follow and trust God. Look, everybody's excited about what's been going on at Vision. Everyone loves to hear the messages online. Everyone loves to hear and see baptisms and hear about salvations and hear about the ministries and the shoe boxes. And all of that is really good. And everyone would say, I hope it keeps happening. I hope it keeps happening. Some of us are like that. Man, I hope God just keeps working hard and showing up and blessing this church and this ministry. Let me be honest with you. God does not reward you for being associated with Vision Baptist Church. Hear me. You can't piggyback on our church's engagement in the mission of Jesus Christ. You can't, it's not enough to say, I come on Sundays and I'm involved. No, you are coming as a consumer. You have to contribute. You've got to do it yourself. It is a personal call. It is not enough to be in this Christian movement and you yourself not moving. It can't happen. And if you aren't moving personally, if you're not growing, if you're not serving, if you're not plugged in, if you're not going and sharing, if you're not contributing to the advancement of the gospel of Jesus Christ, then even though you're here and it's exciting, you're not part of us. That's truth. Engage in the mission yourself. What is God doing in and through you? Not your church. You. Will you follow God? And God tells Abram to go from your country and your kindred to a land I will show you. Leave it all, Abram. Leave it. Leave the land. Land was a big deal. Leave your family. That's a huge deal. And God's not calling Abraham to make a few tweaks in his life and say, hey, come on Sundays and worship me. He was calling him to a whole new life system, a whole new life. Can I just ask you, are you even willing to have the conversation with God to leave it all on the table? Everything. To go above and beyond. You know the place we don't trust God? It's the place that we don't offer Him unconditional obedience. It's that one place where you say, not this. I don't even want to talk about that. What is it that you're not willing to give up for God? You want to know what it is in the top two areas in most people's life? Family, finances. Those are the two areas that we don't. That pastor better not talk about my family, better not talk about money, because those are the two things that I hold tight. He can talk about anything else, just don't talk about that. We struggle with that. We are in a culture where our kids run our lives. And we've done that, and we're blind to it. We make excuse after excuse after excuse. Our kids run our lives. They determine where we go on vacation. They determine what we're going to eat. They determine what we're going to do every day. They run our life. And we've bought into the lie that I just want them to be happy. Really? Really? Get them here. Get them involved in something that is eternally significant. Are you really following God? That's what Abram was faced with. Am I going to follow? Am I going to trust Him? Am I going to close my eyes and say, God, okay, I'm going. I hear you. I'm going. Number two, have I offered my blessings back to God to be multiplied for His kingdom? God's a rich giver. He's a good, good Father. He gives gifts to His children. But He does not bless solely for you. He blesses so that we can offer those blessings back to God so that He can multiply those blessings in the lives of others. Everything in your life, listen closely, everything in your life, everything can be used by God to multiply for His kingdom. Everything. Look at 2 Corinthians 9, verse 10. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for the food, what will He do? He will supply and do what? Multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. Why did God bless you? To multiply your seed. Everything you have, everything you've gone through should be used as a seed for sowing. Look, you can do two things with the seed, right? Two things you can do. You could take that seed and you can grind it up and use it for food. And it's good. Satisfying. Or you can plant it. And it may take a little watering and it may take some time. But what happens when you plant it? There'll be more. There'll be a harvest. What are you doing with what God has given you? What are you doing with it? And here's what we always think. Well, I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot. Like, I don't know what I can give. I just don't know. I hear you what you're saying, Chris, but I just don't. I mean, what am I supposed to give? It doesn't matter where you are, what season you're in. He's given you seed to sow. Look, Jesus observed one day a woman who put in 2 mites. 2 mites. Scholars tell us it's worth about 6 minutes of an average daily wage. It was the least valuable coin. She had nothing. She put in these 2 mites in an offering. Jesus said she gave more than anybody. Because she gave what God gave her, and He multiplied it. And that's what we're called to do. Look, not just financially. Do it with your patience. Do it with your talents. Do it with your encouragement. You know how many times people get a hug or a text or just a smile, and it just blesses them way more than even what you realized? It's because God's multiplying those blessings. You know, you can even offer your pain to God. Some of you are going through some painful stuff right now. And turn that pain into a testimony. When somebody says, man, I'm sorry to hear about your arm, that you got nerve damage, you say, it's okay. At least I still have an arm. Praise God that I still have my arm and that I'm going to be okay and that I've got doctors. Praise God for that, right? That's a way to turn your pain into a testimony. See, God presents Abraham and us with a choice. Hold on to what you have and you'll end up empty. Offer it without restriction to God and you'll be filled. Both you and those around you and the world. And this is hard, isn't it? It's just hard. It's hard to have faith and trust in a God that we can't see. It's hard because often we feel like, where are you? I've been praying. I've been waiting. What else do you want from me? Do you know that Abraham struggled with this too? Abraham, great man of faith. Genesis 12, verses 10 through 13. Look at this. There was a famine in the land. God took him to the land. And there's a famine. Thanks, God. And so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarah, his wife, I know that you are a woman beautiful in appearance. So Abram says to his bride, hey, you are gorgeous. And when the Egyptians see you, they're going to say, that's got to be his wife. Then they will kill me, but they'll let you live. So here's what you do, Sarah. Say you're my sister, that it may go well with me because of you, and that my life may be spared for your sake. You hear this? Deceive them. Lie. This is Abraham. And I just point that out because even Abraham had a lack of faith. Even Abraham had a lack of trust. God promised, but he felt the need to deceive. So many of us are getting beat up by the enemy in our own minds. We fail, and we fail, and we fail, and we fail. And it seems like I say this every single Sunday. But Proverbs 24:16, the righteous man, he is characterized by falling, but every time he gets back up, he repents and turns in a posture of faith and goes. That's what Abraham did. Faith, faith, faith. Do you see how important faith is in the Christian life? Look, it's not just part of the Christian life. You can't just 90% trust God. You got to go all in with this faith thing. In fact, you cannot be a follower of Christ without faith. You cannot. Some of us rely way more on ourselves than we do the God who saved us. And look, like we said last week, our faith should always be growing, and it always gets tested. God will test you, and we don't like it. It's been said that when you work out, and I do not, but when you work out, that your abs are so important. I never understood this. Like when I went to the gym, I wanted the big arms and maybe my legs, but my legs are okay. I just more about arms and chest and shoulders and things like that. But they said the abs are what really matters. It's the core. It's the core, right? It's been said that faith is the core muscle of the Christian life. If that's true, think about muscles. When you work out, what happens? The muscles break down. And scientists say that actually muscles will produce thousands of small tears in the muscle. I mean, it's going through this extreme workout, this extreme pressure, the stretching and pulling, and it produces these small tears. And then what happens? Over time, the muscles and the tears, they grow back and they're stronger. It's bigger. How did it happen? Because it was pushed and pressed and pulled and stretched, and it went through this pressure. You can only strengthen a muscle when you strain it. The same is true with our faith. When we're tested, our faith is strengthened. And let me tell you this. Often, God will take you to the edge. I mean, right there on the edge where you feel like you don't know what to do and you're about to fall and there's no other hope. There's no other way. Some of you are there right now and you don't know how you're going to get through this and you don't know how God's going to do this. And you're trying all these things, but you're almost exhausted. And God will take you to that point. Why? Because He wants to take you to the point of dependency on Him. That when you go to the edge, when God takes you to the edge, you realize that He's the only one that you have. And He's the only one that you need. Listen, great faith, you want to be a man of great faith? You want to be a woman, a young lady of great faith? It doesn't happen by coming to church and singing these amazing songs, being led by a beautiful worship team. It doesn't come by listening to great sermons throughout the week. It doesn't come when God answers a prayer that it was just, Lord, just help me get through the day. I don't feel good. You want to know where great faith comes from? It's not the high moments. If you want to be a man or woman of great faith, listen to me. It won't be pleasant. God will lead you through the valleys. It'll be hard because He's trying to show you to depend on Him and that He's there. He'll allow storms to come in your life just so that you can see Him walk on water. He will send conflict just as a reminder that He is preparing a table for you in the presence of your enemies. God is serious about teaching you and I to live by faith. Because faith isn't just a part of the Christian life, it's all of it. It's all of it. How's your faith? I'm not talking about do you believe in God. I mean, do you trust God? Do you trust Him? So here's the question. How can I do that? I mean, seriously, Chris. God's given me a brain, and a lot of things just won't work out if I trust Him with that. I don't know how to, and you have a lot of questions. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to have this faith. I don't know what to do. This is huge. This is where you need to lean in. This is eye-opening. I believe some of you are going to see God in a whole new light this morning because of this. Genesis 15. This would be something to just write down, highlight, whatever it is, okay? It's pretty lengthy, so just listen and stay with me. Abram said, "Behold, God, you've given me no offspring, and a member of my household will be my heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him and said, this man shall not be your heir. Your very own son shall be your heir." I got no kids, God. Okay. "And he brought him outside and said, look toward heaven, Abram, and number the stars if you're able to number them. Then he said to him, so shall your offspring be. And he believed the Lord, and he counted to him as righteousness." Some of us come in here, and God does something, and we believe God. And it's good. And then we go out. "And he said to him, I'm the Lord who brought you out from Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to possess." Abraham believed him. He said, okay, I got it. I'm gonna be that guy. Look at verse 8. "O Lord, how am I to know? How am I to know that I shall possess it? I mean, I believe you, but you hear him. What's he saying? God, how do I know I can trust you? And God, how do I know I can trust myself? Now he said to him, this is where it gets good. "Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." And he brought him all these, cut them in half, and laid each half over against the other. He didn't cut the birds in half. And when the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Let me explain this to you, okay? If we were to get something done in our house, we got some work done, we would call some guys and we'd get some estimates, and then we'd go into a contract, right? And we'd get a written agreement, what the contractor's going to do, what the electrician's going to do, how much it's going to cost, and they would sign it. Maybe we would sign it. And what are they doing? They're giving you your word that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. They're not going to charge you more. They're not going to do any more or any less. It's a contract. Everybody tracking? Okay. In Abram's day, there was no contract. There were covenants. Here's how they did it. They would cut animals open. Now remember, they would wear these long garments that would even drag on the ground. So they would cut these animals open, and they would walk through the blood. And the blood would get on their garments. Why? Because this signified, if I don't keep my word to you, may this happen to me. I mean, maybe that's how we should do contracts today, right? If you don't keep your word, then... But that's what they did. In fact, the Hebrew word for covenant means to cut. So they would cut the covenant. We signed the contract. They cut the covenant. Verse 12. As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell on Abram. Behold, dreadful and great darkness fell on him. The Lord said to Abram, know for certain that your offspring will be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and will be servants there, and they will be afflicted for 400 years. But I, God, will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterward, they're going to come out with great possessions. Here's the key. Verse 17. The sun had gone down. It was dark. Behold, a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between the pieces, the dead animals. On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your offspring, I give this land from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river of Euphrates, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites. You say, what's going on? Back in those days, if a covenant was made between a person and a king, the king would never have to walk through the animals because he was a king. He was a man of his word. If he went into a covenant, only the person that made the covenant with the king would walk through. And what we just read in verse 17 and 18, go back and look at it. We just read that a smoking fire pot and a flaming torch passed between the pieces. Who made the covenant? The Lord. The Lord made the covenant. You missed it, didn't you? It's not clicking yet. Listen, God is saying, Abraham, I know you're struggling with this. I know you don't see any evidence in your life of the promises that I have made for you. I know you don't see a way, Abraham. I know that it looks like it's not going to work out. But hear me, Abraham. If I fail to keep my end of the covenant, if I fail to do it, I will pay with my blood. But if you fail, Abraham, God says, I will still keep my covenant with you, with my blood. God made himself responsible for his part and Abraham's part. That's the gospel. That is the gospel. We were asleep. We were dead in sleep of sin. Darkness was in our hearts and our lives. The Bible said when Christ died, a sinful darkness came on the whole entire earth. Blood poured out of Jesus' side like a river. Was God's son dying because he didn't keep his end of the covenant? No. Jesus was dying because we didn't keep ours. We're sinners. We failed. We didn't uphold the covenant. And God still sacrificed his son. He said, I got this. I made a covenant with you. See, that covenant extends to us because Abraham was promised that he would bless the nations. Out of his descendants would bless the nations, right? Who came from Abraham? A baby, a baby, a baby. Ultimately, it was Jesus. And Jesus died for us. And what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to bless the world. How? With the gospel of Jesus Christ. The good news of Jesus Christ. Don't you see that covenant promise? It extends to us. It's just an extension of the gospel. And look, we fail. We lack faith. We lack trust. We don't do the thing. We're disobedient. But God's covenant still remains. That's why he gave us Jesus. Because he's a God of his word. He's just. He's merciful. You want to know how Abraham had faith in God? Do you want to know how I have faith in God even when I don't see him working? Even when I don't trust the things of this world? You want to know how I have faith? It's the gospel. It is the gospel. God owes us nothing. He's given everything. Faith doesn't come from within us. Faith comes from what was done for us. That's right. We should have just had a praise break right there. I'm just telling you. Our faith should come from understanding the commitment of God. He so loved you. Dirty old you. Dirty old me. He loved us. And God will make up for any mess-ups in my life. He already has. One last thing. Genesis 17. This is where Abram, his name is changed to Abraham. Okay? Abram fell on his face, and God said to him, Behold, my covenant is with you, and you shall be the father of a multitude of nations. No longer shall your name be Abram, but your name be Abraham, for I have made you the father of a multitude of nations. So here we have Abram's name changed to Abraham. Now listen, in the Hebrew, it was the addition of one letter, the letter H. And that H in Hebrew, it literally means breath. Breath. It's like God breathed on Abraham. Can you sense that? That God just breathed on Abraham. That word breath is ruach, which is translated spirit. God's spirit was in Abraham. And what's amazing, listen, don't miss this. As soon as that happened, you read on. As soon as that happened, as soon as God's breath went into Abraham, Sarah gets pregnant. The promise is fulfilled. Here comes children. And the promise is fulfilled. God is faithful. Why? Because God breathed on Abraham. Because Abraham, his faith in God produced multiplication. We talked about that a little bit earlier. No matter what God's called you to do, Christian, no matter what He's telling you to do, if God breathes on it, it'll come to pass. Now, that doesn't mean whatever you want will come to pass, but whatever God calls you to, He will put His breath on it and He will take care of it. Look, I'm going to say something, and I don't know who's in here, and I don't know who's going to be watching this, but maybe you know somebody that this will speak to. Some people right now are facing a dilemma. Should I abort the baby that I'm carrying? It's real. It happens. People don't feel like they can take care of the baby. It was a mistake. I don't know what to do. And let me just tell you this. Yeah, you messed up. Yeah, you don't know what to do, but that's exactly where Abraham was. And that's exactly the testimony of all of us, is that we messed up and we didn't know what to do. But then God breathed on us. His Spirit came alive in it. And I'm just begging you. I'm begging you. Would you allow God to breathe on you and breathe on the baby and see what God will do and how He'll take care of it and provide? Some of you have got other crises going on, and I'm just saying, would you allow God to breathe on it? Take care of it. So He'll provide. God's asking our church to take some huge steps towards reaching people in the coming year. We want to do some big, big things to reach people with the gospel. That's why we do Beyond. Because we're going to put all our resources into one Sunday and say, let's do it. Let's go get them. Let's go and make disciples. Let's pour into them. I want one last thing, and then we'll close. I want you to hear me very clearly. Beyond December 8th, it's not about the amount we give. It's not. I trust God with the resources. I'm going to trust Him. He's going to provide no matter what. Beyond is about each one of us growing in our faith. Saying, God, You're first in every single area of my life. You're not just first on Sundays. You're first in my family. You're first in my job. You're first when I wake up. You're first when I go to sleep. You're first in my finances. You're first in my schedule. And I'm praying that God, through this Beyond series, just breathes on you. His Spirit just leads you. You have faith in the God who keeps His covenant, who keeps His promise, even though we are disobedient and mess up. God wants to multiply your faith deep in you before He will multiply this ministry wide through you. Can I say that again? God wants to multiply your faith in us before He wants this ministry to go wide through us. As you leave today, I want you just to think about your faith. Not so much do you believe in God. We have a lot of people who believe in God. But have you trusted in Christ's finished work on the cross. I mean, trusted it. Not about what you do, but it's about what He did. Father, I pray right now for men and women and children all over this worship center, all over online, whoever's hearing this, Father. I pray that we right now examine our hearts and say, God, am I following you? I mean, do you have control of my life?